Okay, so welcome to Atomic Habits for Coding. My name is Laura, and this meetup is centered around James Clear's nonfiction book, Atomic Habits. And just to kind of get started, one sec, let me just get that out of the way over here. Just to get started, I wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Laura. I live here in Seoul, Korea, and I want to be quite clear, I'm not a professional. I don't actually work in the industry. If we want to be very, very generous, I guess you could say that my work is a bit techy, it's a bit tech adjacent, but really coding for me is a hobby that I enjoy. And sometimes I put on these meetups, and on occasion I look at the world around me and I have these questions, and I try to answer these questions with code. So for example, if you have attended previous meetups, for example, I looked at Amazon data and what does your own Netflix data, what does your own Netflix data tell you about yourself? That is my background and the way I look at it. And as a result, I want to be quite clear. I'm not here to pontificate or tell anybody how to live their life, because I literally can't, right? And then the last point that I wanted to make is, as I was reading the book, I felt that it might be better for people in their teens or 20s. I know that I would have really liked this book maybe 10, 15 years ago as a younger person. I'm a little bit older now. But yeah, if you ever feel like it's being maybe too simplistic for you, I think that's completely fine, just letting you know. Okay. And yeah, that is an accurate picture of how I feel most days. And moving on, I just want to tell you about all the things that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so in the first part of the presentation, which is probably going to be the biggest part, I'm going to lay out the 4 laws that James Clear lays out in his book. And then he has a lot of examples that I recount as well. The next bit is about my personal perspective and coding, how I sort of use these habits in my own life, and how I kind of put it all together in a sort of routine, in a daily routine, if you will. And then the second to last bit will be a community perspective. So if you have something to say, if you have something to share, if you have any tips or any thoughts, right? If you want to question anything that I've said, if you want me to go over anything again, that'll be the time, and I will not be recording that bit. Okay? I will let you know once I switch off the recording bit. And then I'm just going to, just wrap up and say bye-bye and moving on. Okay, so Atomic Habits, right? It's a bit of a funny name. The way he describes it in the book is atomic means very small, right? But atomic also means kind of part of something bigger, and also having the potential to have a lot of power, right? If you think of nuclear energy, that kind of thing. And the examples that he gives in the book in the beginning are how incremental progress compounds. So for example, he talks about ice cubes. When you have an ice cube in cold weather, it doesn't really do anything, right? It just sits there, and then you keep, let's say, spring comes and then temperature keeps rising, right? Bit by bit. And for a long time, you're not going to be seeing anything. But then after some time, at one point, suddenly it starts melting, right? He also has something called the Valley of Disappointment. So you do something for a long time, you do it consistently, and you just don't see the results. I'll show you a graphic in a bit as well. And then what he noted in the book, I think that was possibly my favorite bit, right? Really, really good, is he said you should just forget about goals and you should focus on systems to continue playing the game. And he gives an example. So for example, if you have a messy room, right? And your goal is to have a clean room, okay? So then maybe one day you have a lot of energy, you clean that room, all of a sudden, okay, right, it's clean again. But then because you're still a messy person, because your system is still messy, it's going to be messy in no time again. So there's no point, but it's kind of it's more difficult to have these goals as opposed to these systems to maintain. Or for example, he says that if you want to be a writer, right? So let's say you want to have a book, and obviously the book is not going to be written in one go or in 1 minute. So you have to be at it consistently. You have to write a little bit every day, and then maybe at the end of it, you will have a book. And then what he also points out is often, for example, in sports, we have winners and we have losers. And people always assume, if you want something badly enough, you will achieve it. But then both the winners and the losers wanted to win that goal, right? This is not really about the goal mindset. And what he also says is you may have a momentary change, but it's not going to lead you to long-term progress if you don't have systems in place. And then the last bit is he talked about happiness and satisfaction. So, hold on, let me just move that so you can see as well. So for a lot of people, they say, my goal in life is to be happy. But then the thing is, if you are always chasing goals, then the moment you have achieved your goal, maybe you are less happy, right? Because you've just achieved it, but now suddenly you're out of it, okay? So he says, if you have your system up and running, you're happy and satisfied every time you are doing your habits, as opposed to when you're chasing that goal and then you reach that goal and boom, what do you do now, right? And what he notes is that behaviors and habits are linked to identity. So for example, if you identify as somebody with beautiful hair, you are more likely to get nice haircuts, do something to your hair, kind of use hair products. If you have an identity of just being a normal person, you may not do that. So he really says you need to identify as a certain person, and then those behaviors will fall in place because you see yourself as that kind of person who would do these behaviors. And okay, so just some graphics first of all. For example, he's got a graphic about the power of tiny gains. So if you improve a little bit, these are your gains that you gain. And then if you get a little bit worse every day, that is how your losses compound. And then on the other hand, if you do things over time, maybe you will not really see results or progress as much. And it creates a discrepancy between what you think should be happening, and that's what he calls the valley of disappointment. And I'll just give you a moment to let these graphics sink in, and let me just have a look at the chat as well. Somebody says, hi from Florida. Oh, hello. I think we've got some more people joining. And just, okay. Anyone else? Okay. Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments so far? Anything you want me to explain? Being called out over the cleaning room. Oh, you like the presentation? I host all my presentations on Canva, and they have a lot of templates, and they're really, really easy to personalize as well. I used to kind of do them on Google, that kind of thing, but I find that Canva is the easiest and most user-friendly one. I'll just pop that in the chat. Written like that. I think it's from Australia. And there's a lot of stuff you can do for free. I use it for all my presentations and graphics for the chapter as well. Yeah, no worries. I do like Photoshop as well, but I've started using it at my job. But I have to say, for whipping up something really quickly, yeah, Canva is a good option. No worries. Okay, now moving on. So what he says if you want to become a certain person, you really need to assume that identity. You need to decide on the person that you want to be. So for example, let's say you want to work out more. You can say, okay, I'm going to be an athlete. And then you need to prove it to yourself with small wins. And that is how you change your identity. And according to James Clear, that is the most sustainable and most long-lasting and most effective way of getting into habits, is to really make it part of your identity. So let's say, for example, you think to yourself, oh, I want to get a job in tech. Maybe you need to decide for yourself, okay, I am going to be a front-end engineer, okay, or I'm going to be, what can we do? I want to be a game developer for, I don't know, mobile games, whatever. But decide on the kind of person and then sort of take small steps towards that. Okay. And then the first law, right? The first law is to make things obvious. And this first bit, I find that really, really helpful for myself. It sounds really stupidly easy, right? But it's really to have that intention and to say, I'm going to do at this and this thing, at this and this time, at this and this location. So for example, I will take this Codecademy quiz at 7 o'clock in my bedroom. Okay. And what I like to do is I have a diary, and my diary really helps me. I feel that every single time when I start writing things down, I will be so much more likely to actually do the thing, right? So I really indulge in my diary as well. It looks like this, nice and girly, nice and pretty. I have a lot of like gel pens and sort of things and stickers, and then I cross off things as well. And it's my legal cocaine, right? It's like a legal high, crossing things off. It brings me so much joy and it helps a lot. Just a little side note, I have kind of prepared some things to show you. It's a bit of a show and tell. I used to be a school teacher for many years. I hope you will forgive me for slipping into old habits. The next bit that he has is he notes habit stacking. So for example, after I do this and this thing, I will do this habit. And as an example, he says, okay, let's say you want to work out more. And then you kind of look at the steps, you kind of break it down into steps that help you get on that path. So let's say after I wake up, I will put on my workout gear, my whatever, yoga pants, whatever you wear. And then after I put on my yoga pants, I'll put on my top. And after I put on my top, I will put on my running shoes. And after I put on my running shoes, I will walk to the lift. And then after I walk to the lift, or take the stairs, maybe if you want to be ambitious, then I will actually go and I will run a little run around the block. So to really create a certain stack of things. The next bit is to make the cues very visible, right? And he says, actually, motivation is overrated. Motivation is not that important. And also, it's very difficult to force yourself to do things, right? You are not a tyrant. You're not a dictator. But what you can do is you can set up your environment. And as an example, he notes, for example, when you go to the supermarket, right? Certain things are at eye level, certain things are in high traffic areas. When you get to the cash register, there will be certain things that are impulse buys, like, for example, little snacks, cosmetics, or even when you think about your fridge, right? So let's say you want to eat less chocolate, okay? Or, hey, excuse me, maybe you want to eat a little bit better. Hey, excuse me, what's going on? And then the things that you have in your house, you're a lot more likely, let's say you have a 6-pack of beer, right? You're a lot more likely to actually empty that 6-pack of beer as opposed to you having to go out and buying it first than if you have it, right? So it's really about availability, if you will. I'm blushing. The second law is about making things attractive. And what he says is he calls it temptation bundling. So for example, if you have something that you need to do, you need to combine it with something that you like, because anticipation is what fuels dopamine. It's not actually the reward. It's looking forward to something. That's really what gets your brain chemistry going. And as an example, he has an engineering student, and that guy really wanted to watch Netflix, but he also kind of felt like, oh, I'm kind of getting to be like a really fat little person, and I don't want to be that kind of person. So what he did was he had a stationary bike in his room, and he sort of hacked that thing in a way that when he started pedaling fast enough, it let him watch Netflix on a little screen that he had installed on it. And if he was riding too slow, if he wasn't burning enough calories, Netflix wouldn't turn on. And then the next bit is culture. Okay? So for example, if you're a student, right, let's say you're studying computer science at uni, that is a lot, that really makes you a lot more likely to sort of engage maybe in the habits, because you're surrounded by people where your desired behavior is the norm. It's not weird, because shared identity reinforces individual identity. And the example that he gives in the book is nerd fitness, where he knows that a lot of people kind of feel insecure. They don't feel very good about themselves. They think they're too fat or not attractive enough or kind of too nerdy. And so he made this one person that he talks about made a gym just for nerds. And then you can be healthy. You can have these healthy habits while you can see yourself as a fit person while also being a nerd. And then what he says is, if you have bad habits, you need to make them unattractive. So you need to highlight to yourself the benefits of avoiding a bad habit. For example, smoking and alcohol. What does it not, or what does it not, what does it do, what does it not do for you? And if you have a hard habit, for example, let's say you don't want to go to work, you can say, oh, actually, I get to go to work, I get to take care of my family, and that really helps you shift your perspective. That's his tip. His third law is to make things easy and to reduce points of friction and to really prime your environment. So you need to make doing the right things as easy as possible. So let's say you want to start cooking more for yourself, you want to get less takeaway, and then maybe you can get a meal kit delivered via an app. And so you don't have to think about grocery shopping, right? Or for example, let's say you want to send cards to people, for example, if people are getting married or if people are having babies or if someone's passed away, and you really want to be in the habit of having that personal touch with your friends, with your family, you have a box of greeting cards. That's what the author's wife does. Apparently, she buys a lot of greeting cards by occasion, and then anytime something happens, she sits down and she can get that greeting card, right? Another thing is he calls it the 2-minute rule. I have to say, for me, even personally, I make it a 1-minute rule, to be honest, because sometimes I just don't have the attention span. So what he says is to scale a habit to 2 minutes. So for example, let's say your goal or what you want to do, your objective is to study for class. And then you break it down. So it starts with open your notes. And the goal is really to have that momentum and to allow yourself to stop after 2 minutes if it's really too difficult. But you can say, okay, I will try to do it for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And then I will start it. And then by the time you start it, you often have momentum where you're like, okay, might as well continue now, because you're already in that mindset. He, in his book, again, he gives a bit of a gym example where he had somebody who wanted to lose weight and he really didn't want to go to the gym. He felt very badly about himself. And this person said, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, but I have to stop after 5 minutes. Okay? And then he did that for a while. And then he realized, okay, well, I'm already here. I might as well just keep going. And apparently that person lost 100 pounds or something. And the last bit for the third law is to automate habits. So for example, if you want to use technology to outsource or to automate good habits or prevent bad habits, for example, you can do something like screen time blocking apps. I think what I've seen is if you want to use your phone less, there is an app, and then if the longer you do not use your phone, it kind of grows something. It grows like a forest or like a flower or something. And then you kind of have that reinforcement. Okay, and then the fourth law, that's an axolotl, by the way, not a Pokemon. Just looking at it, it kind of looks like a Pokemon. Okay. So the fourth law is to make something you want to do satisfying, and it has to be immediately satisfying, because pleasure teaches your brain that a habit is worth remembering and worth repeating. And the example that he gives in the book is there was a third world country, and in that country they were having a lot of problems with people having bacterial skin infections, diarrhea, all sorts of waterborne diseases, that kind of thing. And they just couldn't get people to use soap. And then what they did instead is they got some sort of nice kind of fancy soap that smelled really nicely, and it lathered up as well a lot. And it was just really pleasurable. And then what they found is they went back to that place a couple of years later, and people were still using soap, and public health had improved a lot. Okay, so it's an immediate reward. And also, if you're avoiding a bad habit, you need to make it enjoyable, right? So let's say, for example, you want to save money. He gives an example of a couple, and they wanted to travel to Europe, and they just really loved eating out, right? Like, who doesn't like eating out? And then it always felt like a bit of a sacrifice not being able to eat out. But what they did instead was they had a little glass jar, and then every time they refrained from eating out, they would put, I don't know, $50 or whatever into that jar. And that way they saved money, because it was rewarding to make that sacrifice. Another bit that he mentions is to track your habits, to have a streak. And then I just, by the way, I just want to be clear, I'm not getting paid by Codecademy. I'm not getting any kickbacks. But on Codecademy, you have these streaks, right? So perhaps you've seen it. If you're on Codecademy, maybe you've used it yourself. I think you have several goals, like, I don't know, 2 days a week, 5 days a week, 7 days a week. And then also when you complete a task, right, there's a little green tick. And that really helps as well, I feel like, because it tells you, wow, you've just reached your goal for the week. Woohoo. You can also have accountability partners, something like a study group. You can have a food log, a diary. There are some things you can automate, like a Fitbit, and you can also make yourself feel watched. So for example, a lot of people go to cafes, right? And then the last tip he has, let me just move that a little bit. Wait. The last bit that he has is sometimes you may fall off the wagon, right? And he says, never miss opportunities twice. And if you cannot do something well, do it badly, okay? But it is really important to show up, even or especially when you don't feel like it. It really redoes all your pleasure circuits. Okay, I'm just looking at the time. Unfortunately, I might take maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, which is a little bit longer than I planned. If you want to leave, that is completely okay. Okay, just letting you know. But we're kind of almost at the end now at this point. Okay, now I just want to talk about myself for a bit. Okay, so my intention, if you will, is I have set aside maybe 10 or 20 minutes during my lunch hour, and I allow myself to not really having to learn stuff. I just kind of take notes. Maybe I will review or summarize things for myself. And then at nighttime, I set aside another 30, 45 minutes for learning and for projects. Then what I do in terms of making things obvious is I have a little fold-out table and a little cushion. And I have set them up in a special spot in my living room, and I don't really do anything else at that spot. So it's really just for studying. I have wireless earphones. They kind of look like that. They're very plain ones from the local chemist. And then as soon as I put them in, I'm priming myself. Yeah, I'm going to get started now. And I always leave my laptop and my notes and my pencil case out to sea. And I only use them for that one purpose. I don't use them for any other things. I have some special study pens, if you will. And then the way I stack them. So let's say here we're at nighttime, right? So I finish my chores, dinner, and spend time with my spouse. And the reason why I can't really do things when the husband's not busy is my husband's like a cat, right? So if I don't pay him any attention, he wants all the kisses, all the cuddles, right? So I kind of have to give him attention first, and then I can get time for myself. Maybe you can empathize if you have flatmates, or if you have noisy kids or pets or another partner, right, living with you. Sometimes it can be difficult to get stuff done. Okay, and then I get into my personal grooming. While I'm doing that, I listen to some podcasts just to kind of keep on top of things, keep myself entertained and educated. And then following that, I have my study time. And so I've really got that funnel, right? I'm really stuck in my habits, and I know, okay, once I've done all that, I'm all set up, it's study time. And then it's almost a bit like a little spa experience, right? So I have a scented candle. Let me just, it's got a bit of a rude name, so I'm just going to cover it. Looks like that. It smells really good. If I don't have that, maybe some incense. I have some rain sounds. I've got some fancy teas, and I've got some xylitol sweets. And let me just show you actually the rain sounds. I'll pop that in the chat. Because it's just so good. It's so soothing. It's really beautiful white noise. Oh, shush. Okay, just pop that over here. Oh, some notes in the chat. Thank you. Is my screen supposed to be on graphs? Same thing happened. It's working. Oh, okay. An axolotl. Yes, that was the animal that I showed earlier. Yeah. So I've just put in the chat the video that I like for white noise, and it just kind of drowns out everything. It's really good to help me focus. And then the sweets that I like, let me just show you as well. So they're kind of called Fuzzy Rock, and they come in all sorts of flavors. And again, I don't really use them for any other time other than learning or coding. And once I have one of these in my mouth, I know, okay, it's go time, right? It really grounds me and really gets me in the habit. Somebody says the husband's like a cat too. Okay. Then the other thing is, again, I allow myself to do things badly. So sometimes I don't understand things. Again, I have to be quite honest. I'm not the smartest person in the world. And then those times I have to write things down. I have to have some scrap paper and take notes and think on paper and do little illustrations, little pictures, right? But I always make myself sit down and do that time, even if I'm not the most productive that day. If I struggle to kind of get started, sometimes what I also like to do is a little countdown. So counting down from 10 to 1. Again, for tracking. So I really, like I said earlier, I love checking things off in my diary. So good. Then I have my little Codecademy streak as well, which kind of keeps me on board. And then I like to force myself doing meetups. If you have attended previously, I like to do things that are maybe not easy, that I don't really quite know, but I really want to do them. I really want to challenge myself, and then I force myself to put it as a meetup, and then I'm accountable, right? So, or for example, what I could maybe recommend is if you have a friend who needs a little project or who needs a little help, that can be a good accountability partner as well, because you want to do it for somebody that you're fond of, right? So as an example, my friend had she was investing in some stocks, and she asked me, can you maybe scrape that website, and can you write a program that takes that info and puts it in an Excel spreadsheet? I was like, okay. So I thought I could do it, and then I tried to scrape it. It didn't really want to scrape, but then when I inspected the site, I found a link to an API, which was not publicly listed somehow. And then I kind of went into the API, and then I wrote a little program, and it actually outputs a CSV file, right? So that was a really good experience to kind of keep myself accountable. And again, it's a little win, right? To kind of do things that affirm your identity, if you will. Then again, sometimes things happen and you need to recover quickly. So for example, recently I went on a little trip. I went on holidays, and then I was like, oh man, I can't indulge in all my habits, right? So then I used Codecademy's mobile app, for example. That can be useful to kind of doing things badly. Hey, and as a little bonus, James Clear doesn't really mention that in, hey, oh, what's going on today? It's just tea in that mug, by the way, just to be clear. If I really feel that I'm procrastinating, I'm kind of feeling myself going kind of slowly, or for example, I know I need to do things, but then suddenly I find myself cleaning the bathroom, right? I'm kind of replacing a good habit with another good habit, but that's not really as important, right? What I like to do is to kind of dig in why I'm doing that. And for a lot of people, right, when you're procrastinating, you're actually kind of protecting yourself. And for me, it's definitely a thing where if I find myself procrastinating, I kind of realize it's because I know I'm kind of terrible, right? I'm not really good at anything in particular. I just enjoy it, and then I start procrastinating. The other tip for distractions, I kind of have to wait for my husband to fall asleep. So, which is another reason why I normally do things at night. And I also find that sometimes I just have to switch the phone off. It's not enough for me to put it in sleep mode. I actually have to physically switch the whole thing off, so I can't do anything with it. So that is helpful for me. Okay, I'm just going to stop recording, and then hopefully I can hear a little bit more from you.